who finally read Inheritance.
Me! It only took me like 4 years.
Yay!
Of avoidance. And I tried really, really hard, and I don't know, something snapped in me, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get through this. And it didn't take me too long, actually. I, plodded through it, took my time, and I got there. I have 2 things to say. Nuclear elves and dragons in space!
So as you guessed, this review is going to contain a lot of spoilers.
And
because reasons.
And there's no way we're recounting the plot.
Okay, so what do we remember about it, though?
Okay. Well, okay, so basically what happens, there's a bunch of taking cities because they're on their way to
Galbatorix.
Yeah, and in Uruban, and they take on a few cities. Roran does a lot of that. Aragon doesn't really do a lot.
I read this book about 2 years ago. I wrote an epic blog post about it. I'll link it down below. I'm actually very proud of it. You can actually feel the anger in what, my subtitles.
You know what?
For that.
I liked it. Not as in, this is the best book ever, but I'm like, okay, as an ending to this series, it was a decent ending.
But it just got so silly.
It did get silly. But I mean, and there were holes. Let's be real. He's gonna marry a princess. Never fucking happened. He's gotta go off to the middle of nowhere. Why? But, think that he did a lot of things well, as in, he put in thought to it, right? You know what I mean?
You mean the vague Doctor Who references?
I didn't get those because I don't watch Doctor Who, so right over my head. Not a problem there. But anyways, when he's, taking cities, he's coming up with, clever ways to do things, and, you know what, they were, always oh, we have to stop Galbatorix because he's an awful person, but then he actually gave them a reason why he's even more evil than they thought he was, with the whole, word of power, he can just control everything, sort of thing, right? So they upped him there, right? Was it long? Yes. Were there things they could have cut out? Yeah, but if you know what you're expecting, I feel like it's not as bad as it was. It's not so bad.
You just gave this book a lot more credit than I ever would. Just saying. Okay, my first real major problem with Aragon. That's actually a really good example. But it's so picky and choosy from previous fantasy series. To the point, okay, with fantasy novels, you have your epic story that basically everyone has ever rewritten. And I blame Tolkien because he basically set the standard. But good fantasy novels do something different with it. They either interpret it a different way, I would say Iron Trial does with the Harry Potter narrative, or George R.R. Martin is basically doing with the entire classical fantasy story. They do something different with it. But this book, this series, it just recycles full-on scenes.
I think sometimes, but it eventually does something different. Especially, okay, the first book, okay, that's almost scene for scene. But the farther you get away from the first book, it does start to take on its own. But there are some points where you're just this is rote. This is...
Can we talk about the atomic bomb now?
Nuclear elves.
Okay, so, nuclear holocaust things. So basically they go to this island where was the previous home of all of the riders, and there's a plague that's lying on it, a sickness in the land, and he kind of oh yeah, when they came for the island, this one elf, he did this magical spell thing where he took all of his atoms and all of his particles, the stuff that makes him him, and exploded them, and now there's a sickness upon the land, and I'm just
you mean he turned himself into an atomic bomb? Okay.
And I don't know why, but this is what sticks with me about this series forever. I don't like books that try to re-explain a thing with that thing not existing. So kind of this is basically being guys, this is an atomic bomb, guys, but we can't say atomic bomb, so we're gonna run in circles around the explanation, because you can say atomic bomb, because an atomic bomb would not exist in this fantasy world. But we're going to do all of the stuff. And hopefully you're going to get it. Like, hopefully you're smart enough that you can make these connections. And I find it so tedious. Because
Okay.
it just, why? And, like, there's radiation poisoning, which they can fix with, a super secret magic spell. But,
My favorite part of silliness was just, like, they're trying to go through this storm, and they're getting caught in these giant air currents. And so they get caught in this one that just takes them all the way up into the atmosphere until they can see the curvature of the world. And it's just like, dragons in space. Dragons in space.
And of course, we have the awkward scene where, because our leading lady elf lady gets a dragon. So, Saphira and leading lady elf lady's dragon.
Arya,
thank you! That was the name that I was forgetting. Get it on. Arya and Aragon are just kind of like standing there. And they're getting the feelings. The joyful feelings. I'm just like, I hate this book so much!
That was really silly. Their relationship.
Yeah, like,
Just.
see, I don't understand. Like, okay, he's gonna marry a princess, right? We have 2 princesses. We have 2. 2. How hard would it be to be like, okay, well, no, he's not gonna end up with Arya. He's gonna end up with the leader of the rebellion. She's technically a princess. That would have made sense to me. No, we're just gonna totally drop that plot. Just drop it.
They're not even gonna kiss. Never. Because.
Yeah. Okay, let's break out of the relationship mold. But you know what? Acknowledge it! Don't just ignore it!
Like, and you know what? I find the fact that he was leaving forever a little ridiculous. Because he knows, like, the word of power.
Well, you gotta think, though. If we're ripping off of previous fantasy books, if we look at previous fantasy books, when the hero undergoes a big trial and tribulation, they come back broken. So they can't stay. And that's why Frodo had to leave for the Undying Lands. So of course it makes sense that Aragorn, our hero, who's gone through so much, can't stay with the normal mortal people and has to go to the magical elf land across the sea. That's not, like, that didn't surprise me. I wasn't surprised.
No.
I didn't feel his suffering.
Yeah, like, I agree. Like Murtaugh, I get.
Murtaugh, yeah, I got, like...
that made sense.
Yeah, it's like, okay, like, Frodo, yes, he's gone through all this stuff. He is physically broken because of everything he went through. Harry Potter, we got to watch him go through a lot of, like, emotional and mental stress.
He didn't go anywhere, but...
You're kind of amazed that he managed to, like, survive. Aragorn, it's just like, by the way, your mother and father are dead. All of this stuff, like, your family's a bit messed up. Oh, your mentor's dead? Oh, your brother just got married. Oh, everyone you've probably ever known is either dying.
He didn't suffer.
He was just too white knight about everything.
Yeah, he got through stuff pretty unscathed.
Yeah, and if he changed, because part of the problem with, like, part of the things about your novel is your character goes through stuff and your character changes by the end of it.
He changed physically. He didn't really change emotionally. Yeah. He was still the same character. Yeah, totally.
So that's why I didn't buy his leaving as much.
Well, and I was like, the ultimate word of power. Like, oh, you need to set up a dragon sanctuary? Well, nobody is allowed on this land. Hey, dragons, you're not allowed out until I say, okay. And here are some goats for you to feast on. Enjoy life. Like, it's not hard. But, like, as, like, a plot story, it was like, alright. Like, he put thought into it. It had its clever moments. So, it wasn't god-awful. Was it the best thing ever? Not even close. But I got an ending, and I'm gonna take it.
I just didn't like it.
I didn't suffer.
When I read the first book, I didn't mind the first book. When I reread the first book, I couldn't finish it. It's just, I think there's so many other books out there that I'd rather spend time with.
Yeah, I could see that.
You know what? If you like Aragon, all the power to you. Everybody's entitled to their own opinions. I just didn't.
Yeah. You liked it.
Yeah, when I was young and naive.
I remember you going, I love Murtaugh.
Oh, shut up. You did the exact same thing.
I'm not saying it was wrong.
All right. Well, we'll leave you at that.